Jesus Christ. All right, I better turn down my volume. Wow, they really do just start it like that, huh? 10 frames of a black frame and beautiful silence, and then just dives right in. All right. Alright, it's finally Wednesday, and the second How to Train Your Dragon live-action DreamWorks trailer has finally hit us, and having just seen it, I feel a little bit... Am I gonna be the one to say it? Am I gonna make a lot of enemies today? Here's the thing, right? This movie looks, for sure, absolutely stunning. Of course it does. It's live-action photorealism bumped up with a real studio budget. Not to mention the CGI difference between 2010 and 2025 is just night and day. Oh, the fire is stunning though. The fire and like the classic under the water shot, like it's very, that's good. Like that's the kind of stuff you can do really well in live action. It's very Game of Thronesy. I guess that's what we want, kinda. You just want those big Game of Thronesy style battles on your screen again. And for that, yeah, that's in there. Visually, this looks so stunning, and we've gotten very used to the idea of how photorealistic dragons look in our real world. The dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon movie, the new one, look absolutely stunning. And you know this is going to be just a visual masterpiece when it comes to just eye candy and bait for desktop wallpapers. In a lot of ways, yeah, it's going for that kind of Game of Thrones tone where we just want a big, bombastic, high-budget fantasy battle on the big screen. Since Game of Thrones hasn't given us a good one of those in many years by now. Before lockdown. It's clearly a tone and a vibe that an audience is striving for, and this can give it to us to a certain extent. A terrible terror! Man, Nick Frost looks good. Completely different. Like, I almost didn't recognize him if not for the voice. And like with the one eye shut and everything, he looks great. Hell yeah. When we eventually get to the most iconic moments of this movie, like flying for the first time and just generally all of the sky elements, oh, it's gonna be so fantastic. A proper exploration of being a dragon rider in live action. I can't even imagine how fantastic it's going to look. And this movie has a lot of other W's going for it. It's not necessarily just a Disney live action remake where it's just diluted down and taking weird decision choices. You know, there are some things people criticize this movie about that I don't necessarily think are worth it.
To all of our lands.
Yeah, the actress looks a little different to the character. Big deal. I'm not fussed on that front. If there's ever a hill to die on, it's not that one. At most, the hair design is a little bit kooky, but the costume design in general is these big, bombastic set pieces because they're these big, cartoony Vikings. I like it. It makes sense. It's visually interesting. One of the more contentious elements, I guess, of this live-action remake is that it really is, word for word, a remake. I don't think there is a single original line that we've seen out of all of these trailers so far. And is that a bad thing? Like, the original movie is very well much a masterpiece and one of the best animated movies of all time. Somewhere in the top 100, probably. You can make your own judgment calls on that one. So to stray away from it could very well make it a lesser product. The fact of the matter is they didn't do that. They're staying strictly in their lane. So what it all comes down to instead is presentation and portrayal of this same exact story. And there are some elements I don't like about that. One of maybe the more contentious ones, probably, we'll see, hey, it's an opinion, we're all allowed opinions on the internet, that's just how it works over here, is actually Toothless themselves. Simply because they don't look like they fit in the movie. That's so weird as well. All the other dragons look really good. Like, they're sharp, they're angular, they're Pokemon Generation 1. And then you've just got Toothless, who's so smooth and Disney-fied that he looks out of place in his own movie. Because he's from a different art style, the original, you know? That's weird. That's interesting. I really like the look of the dragons when they've got small eyes and they fit in this world. Astrid doing that little run away from their dragon in training. Good. Toothless looks good for a completely different reason, but putting him in a dramatic scenario uncannys me. Do you see what I'm saying? Toothless looks great. The CGI, brilliant. The interactions with the actor, fantastic. And I'm sure the character is exactly the same and we're going to love him by the end of the movie. But he looks, as a Night Fury, so round and cartoony, gigantic cat eyes, and all the other dragons look good. It's such a weird dichotomy of Disney marketability and just live action grit. And I guess you could argue that the original art style also had just Toothless looking extra goofy cartoony while the others were slightly less so, but it feels notably more uncanny here, and that's a hint of what I'm getting across the board. Does it ruin the movie? Absolutely not. Does it invalidate the original or this movie entirely? No. Just looks a little bit weird. Even when it comes to the live action actors as well. Am I just too cynical? I mean, maybe. Valid. But I do feel like, as much as this is Gerard Butler, Mr. Man himself, looking just as beautiful as the day we lost him, it just looked a little bit to me.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
I'm not sure I like that. They've killed hundreds of us! We killed thousands of them! Like, I get it. It just, I guess when it's not animation, it just looks a bit too cheesy.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
Add that to, like, the giant beard? I don't know if it works. It looks like a stage play, you know? It looks like a pantomime because the costumes are so large and extravagant.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
Now, this scene as well, and these lines, they are in the original movie as well, but the delivery is different. And I think what it is kind of like, this Hiccup feels more like an actual angsty teenager. Like, he's actually rebellious in a way that's kind of overly emotional and more like actually, I don't know, cringe. Whereas the animated Toothless, he has insecurities. He's weak, he's feeble, he's actually got a conflict on the inside. Whereas this guy just kind of, dragons, I don't know. The tone, and I think when you do a shouting match in an animated movie, it works just better than when you do it in live action, because then you just end up with this, which is not quite it, you know? Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you're interested in more animated-ish movie news. I cover most animated trailers as they come out, so if you want to keep up to date with those and get some thoughts on the side, you know what to do. Anyway, back to the second half of a controversial take on How to Train Your Dragon live action. Sure, let's go for it. And to be honest, it kind of goes further when it comes to Hiccup as a character.
You've lost everything. Your father, your tribe, your best friend.
This feels dumbed down. This feels more childish than the kids' show. You know what I think the issue is here, actually? So, they do say that in the original. Astrid says you've lost everything, your father, your tribe, your best friend. And then Hiccup responds,
Maybe your best friend.
Thank you for summing that up.
but they've cut that out of the live-action trailer. So Hiccup doesn't feel smarmy and charming yet. They've cut all of those elements out. The only real expression we've seen out of him, other than caution, is,
We've killed thousands of them!
I like to think that he could still do, you know, the fun part of his character, but had I seen this without literally just watching the original, I would have thought that was the most basic, cliche, overtelling the story for children, a more kiddie version of the kids' movie you could write. In the original, it's kind of parodious, you know? It's like, oh, thanks, I didn't know that already. Shut up kind of vibes, you know? It's sarcasm. But here, in this trailer, in this live-action trailer, I hope they bring that back for him, because otherwise, it loses all depth to it. It loses the layers that it had originally.
What are you gonna do about it?
Probably something stupid. Then something crazy.
What are you gonna do about it?
Probably something stupid.
Well, you've already done that.
And something crazy.
Even the delivery of probably something stupid, you know, it feels a bit more Marvel-y and less probably something stupid, you know? I don't know. The tone of the protagonist now is different, and so I dislike. Once again here, these are scenes we have very much seen, and maybe it's the marketing cutting out all of his smarmy charmingness, but I'm very much getting not on his side, like the acting choice. The actor themselves, I'm sure they're fine. Visually, not fussed. I'm sure they're great and talented. And the director is the original director, but some of the highlights of what makes this character tick aren't felt in this live-action version, which, to be honest, is kind of a classic Disney live-action trait, good or bad. I really want to see the snarkier, inner conflicting version of this weak, feeble Viking coming to a revelation. But so far, he feels more like a Disney prince doing the thing he's meant to do because he's the Disney prince, you know? Slightly. Maybe it's just a matter of you just can't beat the original voice actor performance of the original Hiccup, but like something about those tones, I've been rambling about this so long, my background light has disappeared. Something about those tones just aren't as good as they could be. The big bad looks great. Again, very Game of Thrones. We just crave Game of Thrones. It's a lot to think about because this doesn't look terrible. And at least this time, this trailer is not just a repeat of the original How to Train Your Dragon's second or third trailer. It's interesting, actually. The marketing in those ones specifically focused on the training elements of dealing with dragons, because that's kind of part of the title. You know, it's the way you would expect this direction to be. This time, it's just outright showing the entire damn plotline. But I guess you can get away with that, right? The color palette is interesting. It has a lot of browns and a lot of greens, which is very much kind of that live action diluted color palette. But there is a tiny little extract of saturation and color in there in some places, which is notable. Oh, but I tell you another thing that really, it's more just delivery. Maybe it's the director. Do I just, no, I can't dislike the director, but the pacing is wrong. Some of the jokes in this movie, some of the ways the lines are told, don't have that frame-by-frame perfection, or close to a good timing.
It's like the size of my...
Yeah, like he pauses after the line. It's like the size of my... Ooh! You know?
It's like the size of my... Oh, get it off!
I feel bad for the guy, because clearly he's just, you know, he doesn't actually have a dragon on his face. But I wouldn't wait so long to get, you know, it just... I think the way I feel about it is kind of best wrapped up by this initial thought I had. And, like, I want to like it, and I will like it. I think it's just, this is a 8 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. It's going so hard in trying to just steal the lane and rewrite animation into a form that they feel is more better and marketable. I guess that the small issues it's making still are issues that the original movie didn't have. I guess the best case scenario it could ever have is only matching the original, and any tiny tweaks it makes in the wrong direction will inevitably make it a lesser product. Visually, it looks stunning, but sometimes the actual translation feels a little off or a little fake. Or just a little uncanny. Nick Frost, of course, looks great from the tiny extract we actually see of him. And maybe there's other minor things that I would want to do differently. If we're going to have that emotional scene between Hiccup and Astrid, I would kind of prefer it to be at the sea in sunset where there's light, you know, kind of enriching the scene rather than general Scottish Highlands on a gloomy grey day. Like, why, if we're dealing with live action where anything's possible when you can chuck in CGI anyway, why don't you make these big sunset art pieces? Why has it got to be so realistically gloomy that we're on the United Kingdom island, you know? Like, why do I actually have to look at the Iron Islands? Why can't I have big flourishing cartoon, at least lighting, saturation, you know? There are times where there's elements of that, but sometimes there's not, and it looks a little dulled. The tiniest of points. To be honest, I'm not dying on any of these hills. I just this movie needs to impress me for me to validate it as anything higher than the original. Here, it's only more. It's trying to be as inoffensive and unchanging as possible to just reach the widest, broadest audiences. And for that, it's kind of just a bit lame. This trailer as well doesn't do a lot in highlighting Hiccup as a character. I'm not seeing any of the sarcasm and the charming elements. I don't even see much of the connection between him and Toothless. In the other original animated trailers, it's so much more focused on their scenes together as we learn how to train this dragon here. We get a few couple shots in there, but otherwise this trailer's just trying to show you some of the big set pieces. It's just different marketing. But along the way, it's just whelming at best, uncanny at worst. The story, of course, still immaculate. The crew involved, wonderful. And I'm sure when I sit through this, I will have a whale of a time with endless entertainment. But at no point, I think, will this ever really surpass the original. Unless they do a big twist that I'm not expecting. This looks like a slightly inferior project simply because it's in a slightly less emotive and more restricted style next. Oh, but the soundtrack's gonna be unreal. Did you hear how slow it was? The soundtrack, though, was already massive orchestral masterpiece, so they've just bass boosted it for the title card. That's what we'll do. Just make it slower to dramatize it more. I mean, if they actually play that in the movie, it will be just so stellar. Such a heavy swing, you know? God, it's even slower than that. Yeah, God, that's so slow. So yeah, expect a great story because it's already been written, terrible comedic timing, a little less of the charming character work, all the same lines as the original, just delivered a little bit differently, visually stunning photorealistic masterpieces, and Toothless in the middle of it all. Hopefully just as charming as before, but we haven't really seen enough to warrant an opinion on that yet, I don't think.
Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.
One of the most iconic lines in the original trailer. Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile. They're missing it. They're missing the snark. But considering the fact this trailer released already 2 hours ago, I'm a little bit slow to this one, my apologies. I went to the shops, how dare I, and it's already reached 200,000 views. This is a no-brainer of a moneymaker, and I expect there'll be more DreamWorks live actions from here on, for better or for worse. At least it's not absolutely tarnishing the source material. It's no Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is the good ending for a 2010 film. For now, though, I'd best end it off there. Was that a hot take? Excuse me. If I'm gonna be crucified anyway, please let it be by Dragonfire. Cheers. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video, and I shall see you all in a little bit.